My wife smirked. My ex is coming tonight. If that bothers you, go to hell. She stood in the doorway of our bedroom, already dressed for the dinner party we were hosting. Her dress was a sliver of black silk that I knew cost more than my first car. Her hair, a cascade of dark waves, was perfect. Her makeup was flawless. She was a portrait of effortless elegance, a masterpiece I had funded but no longer felt I owned. The smirk was the final, brutal brushstroke. It was a look of pure, unadulterated triumph, as if she had just won a game I didn't even know we were playing. I looked up from the knot of my tie, my fingers suddenly clumsy. Alejandro is coming here? To our home. Don't be so dramatic, Carlos, she sighed, turning to check her reflection in the full-length mirror. She adjusted a diamond earring, another gift from me. He's an old friend. People will be here. It's not a big deal unless you make it 1 inch. But it was a big deal. It was Alejandro, the man she spoke of with a wistful ache in her voice. The artist with no money but, apparently, an abundance of soul. The man whose name had begun to pepper our conversations like a poison you slowly acclimate to, until you don't realize it's killing you. 6 months ago, she was my Isabella. We were a team. I built a software company from nothing, working 80-hour weeks while she turned our sterile new-build house into a home filled with warmth and laughter. I remember the early days, eating cheap pizza on the floor of our tiny apartment, dreaming of this life. The penthouse in Madrid, the holidays in Marbella, the effortless glide through society. I did it all for her. I laid the world at her feet, and for a while, she seemed grateful. She would trace the tired lines around my eyes and whisper, "My brilliant husband, my provider." Then the company took off. The money wasn't just good, it was generational. And Isabella changed. The change was subtle at first. A little less gratitude, a little more expectation. My long hours, once a symbol of our shared sacrifice, became a personal insult to her. My exhaustion was an inconvenience. Her friends, all wives of similarly successful men, became her primary counsel. They'd sit by our pool, sipping expensive wine, their laughter sharp and brittle. They spoke of assets and allowances, not love and partnership. I started to feel like an administrator of a lifestyle, not a husband. The first Real crack appeared 3 months ago, at a gallery opening. She was talking to a circle of her friends, and I approached from behind, intending to slip my arm around her waist. I stopped when I heard my name. "Oh, Carlos is sweet," she was saying, her tone dismissive. "He's just predictable. He understands spreadsheets, not sonnets." A ripple of condescending laughter went through the group. She didn't know I was there. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I backed away silently, the vibrant paintings on the walls blurring into a meaningless smear of color. I never mentioned it. I just watched. And I saw more. I saw the way her eyes lit up when her phone buzzed with a message she would angle away from me. I saw the credit card statements with charges for lunches at boutique hotels I'd never been to. Small things. Plausible deniability. I told myself I was being paranoid, that the pressure of my work was making me see shadows where there were none. I wanted to believe in the woman I married, the one who held my hand when my first investor pulled out, the one who cried with joy when we signed the deal that made us. The confirmation, the moment the shadows solidified into a monster, came 2 weeks ago. I came home early, a rare occurrence. My afternoon meetings had been canceled, and I wanted to surprise her, maybe take her to that little tapas place we used to love. The apartment was quiet. I found her out on the terrace, her back to me, on the phone. She was speaking in a low, conspiratorial whisper. I shouldn't have done it, but I did. I stood in the doorway, shielded by a large potted palm, and I took out my phone. I didn't record a video, just audio. "He has no idea, Maria," she was whispering, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "He's so buried in his work, he thinks this is all still for us." A soft laugh. "The bonus from the new product launch should clear in a month. My lawyer says that's the time. We file then. With that, and half the value of the apartment and the company shares, Alejandro and I can finally have the life we want. A life of passion, not profit margins." My blood turned to ice. It wasn't just a physical sensation, it was a profound, soul-deep freeze. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was waiting. She was timing her departure to inflict the maximum possible financial damage. I was not her husband. I was her exit strategy. The man she married for love had been replaced by a walking bank account, and she was just waiting for the final, largest withdrawal. "And Carlos?" Maria's tinny voice asked from the phone's speaker. Isabella's sigh was pure theater. "Poor Carlos. He's a good man, I suppose. Just a stepping stone. A very comfortable, very generous stepping stone. He'll be fine. He'll just start another company or something. That's what he does." I backed away, silent as a ghost. I went into my home office and closed the door. My hands were trembling, but my mind was unervingly calm. The hurt was a deep, physical ache in my chest, but another feeling was rising to smother it. A cold, clear, calculating rage. She thought I was predictable, a man of spreadsheets. She was about to find out just how methodical a man of spreadsheets could be. The next morning, I didn't confront her. I kissed her goodbye, just like any other day. "Have a good day, my love," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Then I went not to my office, but to the office of the most ruthless divorce attorney in Madrid. A man my own corporate lawyer, Marco, had called a necessary evil. His name was Hector Vargas, and he didn't deal in emotions. He dealt in leverage and victory. I sat in his stark, modern office and played the recording. I didn't add any commentary. I just let Isabella's own words hang in the air between us. Vargas listened, his face impassive. When it was over, he simply nodded. "This is not a divorce, Mr. Torres. This is a corporate dissolution. Your wife has made a critical error. She has mistaken your love for weakness and your generosity for stupidity. We will correct this misapprehension." For the next 2 weeks, we worked in secret. We moved with surgical precision. My bonus, which had indeed cleared, was rerouted into a new corporate holding account she had no access to. We established a legal firewall around my company's shares, citing a pre-existing and newly drafted shareholder agreement. We analyzed every joint asset. The penthouse was in a trust that I was the sole trustee of. She was merely a resident. The cars were leased through the company. Her credit cards were supplementary cards on my primary account. She had built a kingdom on my foundation, never bothering to check if her name was on the deed. She had access to everything, but ownership of nothing. Her name was on a joint checking account that we used for household expenses. That was it. While Vargas prepared the legal storm, I played the part of the oblivious, work-obsessed husband. I even feigned concern when she seemed distant. "Is everything all right, Bella? You seem stressed." "Just tired," she'd reply, her eyes already looking past me, toward a future she thought was secured. Then came the test. A final confirmation. 3 days before the dinner party, I came home looking defeated. I slumped onto the sofa and put my head in my hands. "There's a problem with the launch," I lied, my voice laced with manufactured panic. "A major bug. We might have to do a product recall. The financial hit, it could be devastating." I watched her face. For a split second, I saw it. Not sympathy, not concern. Pure, unadulterated panic. The mask slipped, and I saw the calculating mind behind the beautiful eyes, frantically reassessing her timeline. Then, just as quickly, the mask was back. She came over and rubbed my shoulder, her touch feeling alien and cold. "Don't worry, darling," she said, her voice a hollow imitation of comfort. "You're so clever. You'll figure it out." She thought her future was at risk. Not our future. Hers. That was all the confirmation I needed. The next day, I told her the bug was fixed, a false alarm. Her relief was so palpable, it was almost comical. She hugged me. A gesture of a shareholder pleased her stock had rebounded. Which brings us back to tonight. To her standing in the doorway, a vision in black silk, daring me to challenge her. Daring me to object to her lover coming into our home. The home I paid for. She thought this was her final power play before cashing out. The ultimate humiliation of the boring, predictable husband. But she didn't know. She didn't know about Vargas. She didn't know about the trusts, the holding accounts, the recording. She didn't know that she wasn't the one playing a game. I was. And I had already won. All that was left was to turn over the final card. I finished my tie, the knot now perfect and tight. I met her gaze in the mirror. I didn't show anger or hurt. I gave her a calm, small smile. "No, Isabella. It doesn't bother me at all. Let him come. It's good for old friends to see each other." Her smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, replaced by a flicker of confusion. She had expected a fight, a scene. My quiet acquiescence was not in her script, but her arrogance quickly reasserted itself. She mistook my calm for defeat. She shrugged, turned, and walked out of the room, her hips swaying with the confidence of a woman who believes she holds all the cards. I took a deep breath, the air in the room feeling cold and thin. The spreadsheet was complete. The calculations were done. It was time to execute. An hour later, our apartment was filled with people. The murmur of conversation, the clinking of glasses, the soft strains of a jazz trio I'd hired for the evening. I moved through the crowd, the perfect host. I shook hands. I laughed at jokes. I made sure everyone's glass was full. I saw Isabella across the room, holding court. And next to her, a man with windswept hair, a tailored but slightly frayed linen jacket, and an air of artistic self-importance. Alejandro. He had his hand on the small of her back. It was possessive, familiar. My wife leaned into his touch, her face alight with a glow I hadn't seen in years. A few of our friends shot me sympathetic glances. They thought I was a fool. They thought I was weak. Let them. I caught my friend Marco's eye from across the room. He gave me a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. He was the only one who knew. He was here as a witness. A friendly face in the storm I was about to unleash. Dinner was a masterpiece of culinary art, catered by Isabella's favorite restaurant. The conversation flowed, light and meaningless. I sat at the head of the table, Isabella at the other end. Alejandro was seated to her right. Throughout the meal, I watched them. The stolen glances. The way their knees brushed under the table. The shared, secret smiles. It was all so brazen. She was flaunting him, her trophy of a more passionate life, right in front of the man who paid for the table, the food, the wine, and the diamonds that glittered at her throat. She thought I was oblivious. She thought I was just Carlos, the spreadsheet man, lost in his own world of numbers. Finally, the dessert plates were cleared. The waiters refilled champagne flutes. The moment had arrived. I stood up, tapping my glass with a fork. A hush fell over the 20 guests. Every eye turned to me. I'd like to propose a toast. I began, my voice even and calm. I held my glass high. Isabella smiled at me from down the table, a radiant, indulgent smile. The kind a queen gives to a loyal but slightly dull subject. I want to thank you all for coming tonight to our beautiful home. I continued, letting my gaze sweep across the room, lingering for a moment on the expensive art on the walls. A home is built on many things. On brick and mortar, of course. But more importantly, it's built on a foundation of trust, of loyalty, of partnership. I saw a few people nod. Isabella's smile tightened just a little. This was not the light-hearted toast she was expecting. I've learned a lot about foundations recently, about what makes them strong and what makes them crumble. I paused and looked directly at Isabella. Her smile was gone now, replaced by a look of wary confusion. The air in the room grew heavy. The silence was absolute. Isabella, I said, my voice dropping slightly but carrying to every corner of the room. You have taught me the most valuable lesson of all. You taught me that sometimes the person you trust the most is simply waiting for the right moment to set fire to everything you've built together. A collective gasp went through the room. Isabella's face went white. Alejandro shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his artist's cool evaporating under the sudden, intense scrutiny. You see, I went on, keeping my eyes locked on hers. I used to think our partnership was about love, but I recently discovered it was more of a business arrangement. One where I provided the capital, and you were planning a hostile takeover. I saw her hand tremble as she reached for her wine glass. Carlos, what are you talking about? Stop this. You're embarrassing yourself. Her voice was a strained whisper, but it carried in the dead silence. Am I? I asked, my voice still dangerously calm. I don't think so. I think I'm just finally presenting the quarterly report. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I didn't play the recording. I didn't need to. Just holding it was enough. I have a recording, Isabella. A very interesting one. You're on the phone with your friend Maria. You refer to me as your walking bank account, and as stepping stone you outline, in meticulous detail, your plan to divorce me right after my bonus clears so you and Alejandro can live a life of passion, not profit margins. Does that sound familiar? The color drained completely from her face. She looked like a marble statue. Her eyes darted to Alejandro, who looked utterly horrified. He was looking at her as if for the first time, and seeing not a passionate muse, but a liability. So, I'd like to make 2 announcements tonight, I said, setting my phone down on the table. First, Alejandro, I wish you both the best. She is all yours. But you should know, the bank is now permanently closed. I looked back at my wife. The joint accounts were frozen this afternoon. The credit cards you loved so much were canceled an hour ago. The car you drive is a company lease, and it will be picked up tomorrow morning. And this apartment, well, it turns out it's held in a trust that you are not a beneficiary of. You have 30 days to vacate. A woman at the table audibly gasped. Isabella just stared, her mouth slightly open, her carefully constructed world shattering around her in slow motion. And my second announcement, I said, my voice softening just a fraction, is that the divorce papers were filed this morning. They cite infidelity and fraud. My lawyer, Mr. Vargas, will be in touch with yours. Assuming you can afford 1 inch. I raised my glass again. So a toast. To truth. And to consequences. I took a sip of my champagne. The bubbles felt like a celebration on my tongue. Then I placed the glass down, turned to Marco, and said, I think we're ready to go. I didn't look back. I walked out of the dining room, through the living room filled with our stunned guests, and toward the front door. Behind me, I heard the first sob escape Isabella's throat. It was a raw, ugly sound, the sound of utter ruin. It was followed by the scraping of a chair as Alejandro, the man of passion, made a swift and silent exit. He wasn't signing up for this. He wanted the lifestyle, not the woman. The unraveling was faster and more brutal than I could have imagined. As predicted, Alejandro ghosted her within a day. Her fair-weather friends, the ones who had laughed at her jokes about me, suddenly stopped answering her calls. They were married to men like me, and they understood the unspoken rules. She had broken them. She was a pariah. The eviction notice came. The car disappeared from the garage. She tried to fight the divorce, but the recording was irrefutable. Vargas was merciless. She was left with nothing but the personal possessions she could carry and the small amount of cash in her own bank account. She had no skills, no career, and no safety net. The kingdom she had lorded over was gone, revealed to be a stage set that I had simply struck from the play. I moved into a smaller, more modern apartment overlooking the city. It was less opulent, but it was mine. It was quiet, peaceful. I focused on my work, but not with the same desperate intensity. I took weekends off. I reconnected with old friends. I started hiking in the mountains outside Madrid. I was rediscovering the man I was before he became Isabella's provider. 6 months later, I was sitting at an outdoor cafe on a sunny Tuesday afternoon, reading a book. I had just closed a new deal, a passion project, something I was doing for myself, not for the money. I looked up, and I saw her. She was wearing the black and white uniform of a waitress at the restaurant across the street. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. The makeup was gone. The diamonds were gone. She looked tired. Older. She was clearing a table when she saw me. Our eyes met across the busy street. There was no anger in her gaze. No hatred. Just a vast, empty expanse of regret. A hollowed-out look of a person who had gambled everything and lost spectacularly. She quickly looked away, her shoulders slumping, and disappeared back inside the restaurant. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel pity. I felt nothing at all for her. Her story was over. Mine was just beginning. I took a sip of my coffee, turned the page in my book, and let the warm Spanish sun fall on my face. The foundation was solid now. It was built for one, and it was built to last.